President Logan's point is that the Fed can produce reserves for free, so social efficiency indicates that they should do so until the cost or the demand is set equal to that free level of price. And by free here, the interest rate in market should be equal to the interest rate the Fed pays. I think that that's mistaken for a number of reasons. One is, as we've been discussing and have discussed in previous shows, creating reserves is not free. It presents all these problems for the Federal Reserve with respect to its independence potentially, there was some cognitive dissonance in my part listening to a paper by a New York Fed economist being presented at the annual Columbia BPI conference that took place just a couple days after Lori's speech, where the paper was discussing how the over $2 trillion move of money out of the banking system into the money market mutual fund system, when reserves were no longer excluded from the denominator of the leverage ratio, demonstrates powerfully that the balance sheet cost associated with making banks hold all these reserves or really lend to the Fed in the amount of these reserves is in fact quite costly to the banking system. It's far from free. It moved around. You could see it in the move, and this was a movement to a means of borrowing from money funds in which the Fed was paying even 10 basis less than borrowing through reserve balances. But it was so costly to the banks to provide those reserve balances that the new equilibrium was one where they were that all of that funding moved, or a lot of the funding moved, to money market mutual funds. So there's just all kinds of reasons to understand that it's not free.
And you've written elsewhere that the Friedman rule, the logic of it, can also be satisfied in a corridor system.
That's right. Thank you for that point. It can be satisfied in a corridor system. And it is satisfied in two ways in the manner that I suggest. One is if the banks want to hold voluntary reserves that then they're free to use to meet liquidity purposes, it would effectively provide something close to that market rate as compensation, still enough to encourage an interbank market or to encourage the Fed to get much smaller, but also the discount window is there and should be recognized as a means of liquidity. The Fed has made some good steps in that regards, but really that's a very robust way to provide those Friedman-like liquidity, contingent liquidity on the part of the central bank, and that's provided for free.
Okay, so when it comes to the Friedman rule, they make a claim on their side, you say, well, I have an answer. It satisfied both systems. So we will take that off the table as a deciding factor for now.